and welcome to the second live training, and this one is stress. So I'm very excited to be doing this because it's such an important topic, and particularly at this time of year, isn't it? The days are getting shorter, the nights are getting longer. I think just having less daylight, less sunlight makes us all a bit more tense, a bit less relaxed. And then there's the run up to the festive season, all the expectations that are heaped on us to create magical festivities for everybody. And the ones that we then heap on ourselves, given what the society's heaping on us. And then, of course, we have all the news stories. Remember, in past times, it took a long time for news to reach us from the other side of the world. Now, it's just like that. So whatever's happening anywhere, we're the first to know pretty well, and we're bombarded with that. So stress is coming at us from all angles, and I think this is a really, really important topic for me to be looking at. So, as I put in the written description, we know when we feel stressed, we just know. But if we take time to really feel into our bodies when we're feeling stressed, and of course that's the last thing we do is stop when we feel stressed, whereas it should be, or could helpfully be, the first thing that we do. The stress isn't always the same in our bodies. It's often got to do with muscular tension, but is it, our shoulders that get tight? Certainly when I'm at the computer all the time, that's exactly where it goes to for me. Some people's breathing goes tight. Some people actually get completely breathless. And some people, it's their digestion that goes to pot. They get really bloated or have diarrhea or something. Some people, it's their concentration that goes, and they can either spin off into this hyper state or go down into this really foggy, glazed state. So there's a lot of different things that stress can look like in our bodies. And even within any one of us, we're likely to experience several of those at different times. So what I'm going to present this evening is 4 key stress remedies. There are masses of others, and I've taken a punt on these 4 as being ones that would be really, really useful for you to know about and to recognise. So the remedies that I'm going to be looking at are arginine, Gelsemium, Ignatia, and nux vomica. Anyone who's got the 36 remedy kit, you'll have all 4 of those. Anybody who's got the 18 remedy kit, you'll have 3 of those 4. Yes, you will. And I'll talk at the end about the special stress kit which I have put together, which some of you might like, particularly if you know that you work in a stressful environment, or things are often really outside your control, and that this will be really useful for you. So I'm going to go through the remedies one at a time. The first one I'm going to do is arginine. A bit of a funny name, isn't it? It's short for, it's an even funnier name, argentum nitricum, so it's silver nitrate. And arginine is a fantastic remedy for anxiety and anticipation and stress, and it's sort of, if you want a visual image to go with it, I would say it's the headless chicken sort of state, the running around in circles, not able to focus on anything at all, and feeling a bit sort of panicky and scared by everything. It's a bit like sort of the, oh, the sky is falling in type of remedy. So, headless chicken. So the symptoms that we've got for this, it'll be things like feeling restless and hurried, hard to concentrate, hard to settle on anything. Interestingly though, and this is one that people often comment on to me, they talk about their legs either feeling like jelly or feeling like wood. So you've either got jelly legs that feel as if they're just not going to hold you up at all, or you've got wooden legs, which means that you find it a bit hard to move, think wooden tops type of thing. So yeah, you're thinking sort of the fight, flight, freeze type of thing there. Digestive system symptoms. Now, these are quite pronounced with arginate, and they are worse for sugar. So eating sweets or anything, which is the sort of thing arginate, people will want to go for sweets when they're feeling in this stressed state. And when they do, it will give them diarrhea, bloating. So it'll be really uncomfortable. So you might recognise this remedy as one that's relevant for you if you know that you have to keep dashing off to the loo, if you should get this sudden urge. So arginate is a good one to remember for that. It's not the only one, but if you've got the other things that go with it as well, then that could help be a deciding factor for you. Headaches, really nasty headaches. So you can get migraine type of headaches with your head, or just a headache, it needn't be a migraine, feeling as if it's caught in a vice. So that's really being pressed in from both sides, all sides, back and front as well, but I've only got two hands. Something also that's significant, if your stressful event is about you having to present or stand up, you might know that you've got some bad news to present to people, or just that you're feeling stressed about having to do a major presentation when you've got X, Y and Z to do and you haven't had time to prepare it properly, and all these things, and then your voice suddenly goes, you suddenly feel croaky before you need to speak. That also is a sign of arginate. And in my big books that I talk about a lot, which have got all the symptoms in and everything, it talks about singer's throat as being something that can be helped by arginate. So if you suddenly find you're getting hoarse just before you've got a performance, give arginate a go. You might help get your voice back. So along with losing your voice, which is what happens when you're losing your voice, is really that these sinuses at the back of your nose fill up with mucus, and the mucus then drips down the back of your throat and lands on your voice box and clogs it all up, so it can't operate. So the hoarseness is the claggy voice box. It's trying to vibrate with all the mucus gunging it up. So the hoarse voice is one presentation of it. Another presentation is having to keep clearing your throat. So you've got your voice, but you need to keep doing this because you keep feeling as if you've got something caught in your throat. I wish I hadn't started doing that just now. Another indicator for arginate can be poor sleep. I had one client who, whenever she needed to do a business flight up to the other end of the country, she was waking up every hour during the night just to make, worried that she wasn't going to get up in time to get her plane. And arginate was fantastic at giving her that night's sleep. So it relieved that anxiety, relieved that stress around that situation. So quite a wide range of symptoms there, and some of those maybe ring a bell for you. It's a really useful remedy. So the sort of feelings that you might find go along with those symptoms, it's a real panicky, unsettled, what if type of feeling. And you can make impulsive decisions or just impulsively decide to do something. It's likely to have with it a fear of tall buildings, fear of crowds, fear of enclosed spaces, fear of flying. So, you know, turning up to the airport, not helped by the fact you have to be there hours beforehand, but do the jelly legs kick in then, or the wooden legs? That would definitely suggest that arginate would be a good remedy to go for. Fear of tall buildings, you know, closing in on you or whatever. You've got the agoraphobia, you've got the claustrophobia. It's you know, a really quite scared, panicky remedy here. And you expect your memory to fail. So someone like me, who's just joined a choir where you have to learn everything off by heart, and no words are allowed in the concert. So if I go along to the concert, even though I know that I've learnt it all, and I know in the rehearsals I can do the whole thing from beginning to end, I'll turn up to the concert and I'll want my words with me till the last possible moment, because what if I forget them? And of course, the more I get into this what if state, the more likely it is that I just won't be able to remember, because I've got myself into this state that I won't be able to remember. I know I won't be able to remember. Arginate. So what can make you feel better when you're in that sort of state? Fresh air. Being outside can make you feel better, but not near tall buildings, because you don't like the tall buildings. They're a bit scary. But find a way of getting some fresh air. Maybe just opening a window would help. And being with other people. So being on your own makes it worse. The other things that make it worse, as I've said, eating sugar makes it worse. Being in hot, stuffy rooms makes it worse. And your stress is much worse for any sort of anxiety or anticipation around some upcoming event. So, really useful stress remedy, really useful anxiety anticipation remedy. It's also a really good migraine remedy in its own right. And if you delved into it, or if I delved into it, I would probably discover that there was some sort of stressful anticipatory event behind the migraines. There was probably a pattern there. Eye complaints, it's good for. Stomach ulcers, if you think they go with stress, don't they? So that's quite an obvious sort of link. Insomnia and throat complaints, so you've got the hoarse voice, the needing to clear the throat, and the postnasal drip, which can be associated with a very, very painful sore throat indeed. So that's arginate, that's headless chicken. Okay, right, that's remedy number 1. Now, the next one we're going to look at is Gelsemium. Gelsemium is a pretty yellow flower. It looks a bit like winter jasmine, but it's not winter jasmine. It's a type of jasmine that you get in America. I can't remember its other name now. But yes, it looks a bit like winter jasmine, but it isn't. This is a really different type of picture. So Gelsemium, think stunned, think hard to keep your eyes open, just completely foggy, lacking in energy. So when stress just makes you feel completely drained and as if you can't stay awake during the day. You know, it's this sort of remedy. Very, very different. So with arginine, you're likely to have quite a sudden start to those symptoms. With Gelsemium, you've quite likely got a very gradual build up, and maybe over a couple of days that you notice your energy's getting sapped and you're getting tireder and tireder. You've got heavy, shaky, achy limbs and a heavy head and a foggy brain. So really, it's quite a paralysed sort of picture. Hard to keep your eyes open. Really lethargic and unmotivated. And quite happily sleep for most of the day. The corollary is that at night time you find it really hard to get to sleep because it's hard to switch off these thoughts. You know, when we get stressed, when we get anxious about anything, switching this head off is sometimes one of the hardest things to do. This is another anxiety stress remedy that has diarrhea as part of its picture. So if you're recognising this, you know, real lethargic, achy, shaky type of, it feels a bit fluey, doesn't it, from what I've described? If you recognise that picture and also a sudden need to dash to the loo, then that's pretty a good sign that Gelsemium would be a good thing to go for. So, associated feelings: feeling heavy, listless, drowsy, and there's often a dread of something coming up. You know, something is happening. It could be exams, you know, something really important. It could be public speaking, there's a big event coming up. Or it could be stunned from shock or from bad news. So I reckon if they'd given the soldiers in World War I who were suffering from shell shock, I reckon if they'd given them Gelsemium, quite a lot of them would have felt quite a lot better. And some of those who were lined up and executed by firing squad because they were paralysed and couldn't move, again, Gelsemium might really have supported, but who knows, that's just speculation on my part. So what makes you feel better when you're in a Gelsemium sort of state? You feel better completely differently from the arginate running around like a headless chicken. The Gelsemium, you feel better when you're left alone and quiet, and you can just get on with something without being bothered by anything. If you're lying down, for some reason you feel better with your head raised up a bit, and also for some reason you feel better after you've had a good wee. Now, I don't know why that is, but I'm sure there's some physiological explanation that links, you know, the lying with the head raised and the having a wee, and how they relieve the stress, anxiety feelings that go with Gelsemium. You feel worse with any sort of movement because it's too hard work, because you're so tired and lethargic. You feel worse for the heat of the sun. So particularly spring, summer, autumn, you know, the warmer times of the year, Gelsemium is a remedy to think of. So what is Gelsemium useful for as well as this? Well, just before I say that, I'm going to elaborate a bit more on when I've seen Gelsemium useful, really useful as a stress remedy. I have prescribed it many times for students who are GCSE, A-level, university students who have got coursework deadlines, exam deadlines, and just can't get out of bed. They find themselves sleeping half the morning and they've got no energy at all. And Gelsemium is a really, really good match for that. They can't articulate that they're feeling stressed about their coursework, about their exams, that they're worried about these up and coming things. Because when your body does this, actually you don't know that you're worried about these things. It's because you're squashing those feelings down at some deep level that your body comes out with these symptoms. But it is a really useful remedy for pre-exam type of nerves. I've also prescribed it for someone who did really badly in their Year 12 school exams, the ones that come just before your university application is done. Someone did really, really badly in those and instantly lost all energy, lost all voice, and, well, just took to their bed for weeks. So that was a sort of shock from bad news that went into that, with the stress and anticipation of, you know, their life had been mapped out. You know, school, university, and now they were at a point where, what were they going to do? I have also prescribed it a lot for what was I going to say? Sorry, just lost my train of thought there. We'll just stick with the school exams thing for the moment. Because that is such a good fit so often. Oh, I know what the other thing was. After somebody's died quite suddenly, or even quite expectedly, where you feel this sort of complete, my head's in a fog, I really can't move, I've got no energy, that sort of picture after somebody's died. Gelsemium again fits very well, because there are so many different occasions when we're feeling stressed. So many different things stress us. So it could be something completely different from those two examples that I've given. Could still be the right remedy if the symptoms match. So the main things to hang on to there are the really lacking in energy during the day, not being able to sleep very well at night, and not being able to keep your eyes open and just wanting to be quiet and on your own. So it's really useful for, you might have recognised quite a lot of that and thought, you know, that sounds like a flu-y cold, or it sounds like a flu. And Gelsemium is a fantastic remedy for spring, summer, autumn, colds, flus. It's really good for hay fever, where you've got that match of symptoms, where the energy really gets drained away by the symptoms. And it's also a very good headache remedy. It's good for eye complaints too, and it's good for fear of doctor or the dentist, or again some sort of stressful event like that, something where you're anticipating that either they might say something bad, give you some bad news that you don't want, like you need a tooth out, or you need a root canal filling, or something like that. Or it might just be the anticipation of going, that you've had a really bad experience in the past and you find that for the week beforehand you're getting slower and slower and slower. Gradual onset, that sort of sluggish, lethargic symptom picture. Think Gelsemium. Really good for that sort of stress. So I've not got a strong visual picture for that one, other than it's just this stunned, not being able to keep your eyes open, sleeping when you should be awake and being awake when you should be sleeping type of thing. So the next remedy that I'm going to do is Ignatia. Now, Ignatia is a really useful remedy for, it's just about the most useful remedy for acute grief. So I have prescribed Ignatia for the stress that someone has felt, the stress and grief that they have felt around scraping. It was a very minor collision, scraping their new car as they, just misjudged a bollard. And it's that grief over the loss of a possession. So if a child loses their favourite toy, or you've got a toddler in a buggy and their comfort blanket drops as you're going along and you don't notice in time, that sort of loss, that sort of stress that's engendered by the loss of that could put someone into in an Ignatia state. And the visual picture that I have for Ignatia is like a roller coaster, so really up and down, and the emotions, 1 minute they're sort of flailing about in grief and the next minute they're calm. The next minute they might be laughing inappropriately at something that's really not funny. There's sort of this real difficulty in regulating emotions, and of course when it's a stressful time it's quite okay and to be expected that your emotions are hard to regulate, but it's a really important part of the picture here that helps you recognise Ignatia as a useful remedy to go for. So the sort of symptoms that you're looking for an Ignatia picture, I would go for if it's an acute grief, if someone has suddenly died, if it's a funeral that you're attending, or if there's some injury to a possession or a person, or some sort of loss with something that you're attached to, got some sort of emotional attachment to, then Ignatia is the first one to think about. Even if the symptoms don't match, I would give Ignatia a go, and if it doesn't work then you try something else, but it's just worth going for. So as I say, your emotions are up and down. You can have waves of crying, so you just get consumed with tears and then it'll just ease off, and then with apparently no trigger at all you'll just get another wave of grief a bit later on. So Ignatia's really good for that. There can be some sort of facial tics or grimaces or a strained expression, and something that I've found quite often crops up is a really light sleep. You're woken by the slightest sound. I remember having a client once who said that for years she hadn't slept decently. She could hear a pin drop at the other end of the house. The slightest creak, the slightest sound, she was awake again. And when we looked into it, actually that all started after her mother died. So that's a good fit for Ignatia. And if you become aware, I mean, this is the sort of thing that creeps up and you don't notice that it's happening, but that you suddenly find that your sleep is really disturbed and it's, oh, yeah, I heard something then. And if that keeps happening, think Ignatia. There's often a really deep sighing. Sometimes you actually get someone and they can do that several times. repeat in during a conversation, this or yawning. One of the places that we store grief, according to traditional Chinese medicine, is in our lungs. So it's not surprising then if you accept that way of looking at things, that if you've got some sort of acute grief, there is an involvement in the lungs then, and the sighing is just the release of that pent-up tension that you're holding on to. Or yawning is another way of also letting go of a tension that you're holding on to. And there could be quite a pronounced feeling of a lump in your throat. The throat's quite a big place. The throat and the lungs are quite a big place for Ignatia, because another thing that you might find is a dry, nervous cough. I have in the past given Ignatia to someone who she was a carer, and she developed this persistent cough that she just couldn't get rid of, and it started when one of her elderly clients was very, very poorly and then died, and from then on she had this cough. So again, that fits the Ignatia picture. So if there is this cough that starts, and there's another time that I gave Ignatia was when a 3-4-year-old girl was moved from one class to another in her nursery school, and she left behind all her friends, and she developed this cough that just wouldn't shift. It was Ignatia was the remedy that really helped that. Feeling stressed and ungrounded and sort of, really up at the top of this roller coaster can also be helped with Ignatia. And the type of personality that goes with Ignatia is often someone who's quite hard on themselves and hard on other people that they know well, have very high expectations, and a real perfectionist. So if you know someone, or even know that you are the sort of person who is expecting a lot of yourself, and it's easier to notice in someone else, but you notice this sort of cough develop, or someone whose emotions are very up and down, I think Ignatia, it's worth giving it a go. Someone who needs Ignatia isn't better for company. So there are some aspects that you might think, oh, but is this arginate? Is this a headless chicken? Because again, it's quite a high energy state, the Ignatia one, as opposed to the Gelsemium that was a very low energy state. But Ignatia really prefer their own company, whereas arginate really like being with other people a bit more. So Ignatia feel better for eating, or they feel better for not eating. So someone who has a grief, if somebody dies, or somebody's gets an unexpected diagnosis, and a close friend, for example, might suddenly find that they lose their appetite, and that would be a sign of Ignatia. Better for deep breathing, so there you've got your sighing type of picture. Better for swallowing, and better for being alone. And the converse of that is worse for being consoled, worse for somebody trying to make them feel better, worse for somebody actually understanding and showing compassion. Sometimes it's the last thing people want, particularly if they're really hard on themselves. They don't want somebody understanding the situation that they're in, because they want to beat themselves up. Worse being in the open air, worse being touched, and now these are interesting ones. Worse for the smell of tobacco, and worse for the smell of coffee. So if you suddenly find you've gone off coffee, or you can see that someone's either eating a lot or stopped eating and, nah, just don't fancy coffee, nah. Ignatia, think Ignatia, and you will probably find that there is something that's gone on that's really stressing them, and there's probably some sort of deep emotion in there. So we've got this roller coaster type of picture, and other things that Ignatia's good for, they're really contradictory things. It's quite bizarre, and so when these things happen, you'll sort of notice them, because it's things like a sore throat that is better for eating solid food, so that the time that your throat feels worst is when you're just swallowing saliva. That really hurts. Whereas you have a piece of toast and, oh, that's, you know, it's fine. Now that's a bit strange, isn't it? You would actually expect with a sore throat it to be much worse when you eat a crunchy bit of toast. Things like nausea that's better for eating. That's not the way around you'd normally expect it. You would expect nausea to be better for not eating, but where Ignatia is the indicated remedy, it's the other way around. It's a good piles remedy. So piles that are better for sitting on them, and they're often quite sore when you sit on them. So again, that's a sort of contradictory thing. And other times that I've prescribed Ignatia is people whose periods have unexpectedly stopped. So someone who's been in a relationship for years, and that relationship breaks down and their periods just stop. I've had people women come to me and say, oh, I think I've gone into early menopause. And you talk to them about what's happened and the timing of things, and quite often there's a grief there. And I always warn people when I give them Ignatia that their periods might come back again, just so that they're forewarned. Because it can be a shock when you really think that that's what's happening to you. Because there's this emotional link between periods and stress. And with Ignatia, it's particularly emotional stress. And I can certainly remember, you know, your period could be a few days late if you've got exams coming up or something stressful happening, or as soon as something stressful had finished, then it would start. So that link between emotions and your period, think Ignatia. So quite a lot of different things there. So roller coaster, hard on yourself, perfectionism, up and down, contradictory, things that you wouldn't expect to go together, going together type of things. Okay, so we're on our last remedy now. Let's do these fast and furious. The fourth one that I'm going to do is probably the best known of the remedies that I'm doing today, and that's Nux vomica. I tend to talk about Nux vomica a lot. It's a really, really useful remedy for so many different things, and it is a very useful stress remedy, and it's particularly useful for somebody who burns the candle at both ends. So it's again somebody who works hard and plays hard and sets themselves very high standards. It's another sort of perfectionist remedy. It's much more irritable than Ignatia though. So a Nux vomica stressed person is going to be really tense. The muscles are really tight, and they are very irritable, and they are likely to bite your head off if you suggest anything or get in their way or interfere with whatever they're thinking about or generally try to be helpful. Just leave them alone. So, symptoms that go with nux vomica. You have got, as I've just said, muscular tension. So this is the person who is going to have a sore back, sore shoulders, sore everything. They may well have a sort of hangover-y type of headache as well. And the tension and stress goes into the digestive system, and the muscular tension can lead to constipation, that sort of real tightness, holding on to everything in the bowels. It can also lead higher up the digestive system to indigestion, heartburn. So someone who you know is working hard, playing hard, who's got a lot of heartburn or indigestion, nux vomica is a really good remedy to try. There could be some nausea as well, and as I said, the headache pressing down on the top of the head. Really sensitive to light, sensitive to sound, sensitive, as I said, to other people's interruptions that break their train of thought or break their control over what they're in the middle of doing. So if someone's decided they're spending an hour working on something and then they're going to do something else, if you come in and suggest they have a break after about 30 minutes, then that is not going to be a good idea, because they've already decided what they're going to do. And yes, yours might be a really sensible suggestion, but not from where they're standing or sitting, it isn't. So the irritability is quite pronounced. So you could get some gritted teeth as well, the jaw set, and also you could with Ignatia too. So better for warmth, because it can be quite a chilly remedy, because when you're that tight, you're not helping your peripheral circulation at all. So tend to be very chilly. Better for sleep, but then of course you're depriving yourself of sleep because you're working hard, playing hard, the sleep is squashed. But if you give yourself the opportunity to have the sleep, it can be much better. Better for firm pressure, and better in the evening. Worse, some of you may think you've heard of nux vomica, and if you have, it may well be as hay fever. Well, it is a hay fever remedy. It's the hangover remedy, absolutely par excellence. So you feel worse for either eating or for drinking alcohol, worse for smoking, so you've got all these stimulants. 3 to 4 a.m. is a really bad time. So if you've managed to get to sleep, then that's the time that you're quite likely to ping awake between 3 and 4 if this is a nux vomica sort of stress that you've got. It's really funny this, isn't it? The way different remedies affect sleep in a different way. So you've got the Ignatia, where the slightest sound, you can hear a pin drop at the other end of the house, or a mouse creep along the floorboards. I think one of my clients described it as. But with the nux vomica, it's more 3 o'clock and you're awake, because your liver is quite stressed with the nux vomica picture. You feel worse for having to think, and particularly if you're being challenged by someone else, better just to leave them alone, and worse for bright light. So you probably recognise a hangover picture there as well. So it is really useful for hangovers. It's really useful for hay fever, for colds, for flus, for constipation, heartburn, morning sickness. And did I say hangovers? I'll say hangovers again. Fantastic remedy for all those, you know, the things that go with a really irritable, snappy picture. Burning the candle at both ends is I think the best picture to hang on to. Well, for me it is, for Nux vomica. So somebody who's a real perfectionist, so a school student who is not being emotional and going up and down, not getting the low energy, but being really organised and really rigid about their timetabling and knowing exactly what they're going to do when, and not wanting to be disturbed, but getting a few stomach aches while they're doing this. So they're managing their stress by just keeping everything very controlled. Nux vomica could really help them just relax a little bit, help the tummy ache go, help them get their work done without the discomfort. So that's the fourth remedy. I hope that was quite a clear difference between the four there. They are quite different. But as ever, as I always say, if you try one and it feels like, you know, oh, this is the best one, and it doesn't work, and you try for several doses and you're still getting no improvement at all, then switch to another one. Switch to the one that looks closest, the one that and if you thought, oh, is it this one, is it this one, try one. If it doesn't work, try the next. Or if you think it's a combination of those two, I'm convinced it's a combination of those two, then alternate the two. It's not going to do you any harm, and it might really provide a lot of support. There are, of course, other stress remedies, but this is a good place to start. And I think that's a really useful set of 4 remedies, and I hope that you find that really helpful. Now, as I have done before, I'm quickly going to run through now how to take the remedies in an acute situation, because I am talking about acute situations here. This is for short-lasting conditions. This isn't for things that have gone on for years and years and years. If it's that situation, you'd be much better off going to see a professional homeopath, because that's something that's not going to shift easily, and there could be something else underlying it that you'd really benefit with some professional support on. If this is something short-lived, you can see why it started, you can see it's going to finish in a few weeks, like after Christmas or after exams or whatever it is, then have a go yourself, have a go with these remedies. So as soon as you can identify a problem, a pattern in behaviours that you think, this, you know, there's a lot of pressure building up here, I'd really like to be able to ease this pressure a bit, then you identify which of those 4 remedies, and the one that's closest, you take a pill, and you take it as soon as you can after the start of the symptoms that you've noticed. And I only say that because it's just easier. If you've heard me talking before, you'll know I talk a lot about energy, and I talk about the energy that's in the remedies, and you're using the energy that's in the remedies to top up where there's some energy either being used up really quickly in the body or being depleted in the body. So if you can see this tense, stressed picture building up where a lot of energy is being expended, running around like a headless chicken, getting very emotional, hanging on tightly, or actually using up quite a lot of energy just trying to keep going. No, that's the depleted picture, isn't it? So if you can see that happening, the remedy is going to support the body and replace the energy that's lacking, replace the energy that's being burnt off really quickly. So the sooner you can put that in place, the less depleted the body has a chance to be. So that's the only reason that I'm saying get in as soon as you can, because you're giving yourself the best chance of success and the best chance of really supporting whoever it is who's suffering with these symptoms. So you take the first dose, and then you should reasonably quickly, say within 5-10 minutes, notice a calming down. And that's a really good indication that you've chosen a remedy that's helping. And if you notice that calming down, then you stick with that remedy. That's fantastic. Well done, you. As soon as that starts wearing off and the tension starts building again, or when the energy has risen a bit and when the energy starts to sink again, if it's Gelsemium, when you see that happening, take the next dose. It's not your body saying that's the wrong remedy, it's not working. It's your body saying, I've used that up. Remember, you got that positive bit first. If you had the positive bit, stick with that remedy. Take the next dose, and then you will get more of the positive reaction. And the positive reaction to the first dose may only last 5 minutes, might last 10 minutes. It might only last a few seconds, but if you notice an improvement, when that wears off, take the next dose. And the next dose will last longer. It'll last 2, 3, 5 times as long as that first one. So you'll probably get 10 minutes support from the first one. You'll then get half an hour's support from the second one. And then when the second one wears off, you take another one. And that one's going to last longer again. So that one might last you a good couple of hours. And if you're lucky, you can get into a picture then of taking, say, 3-4 pills a day, 3 or 4 times during the day, and that will help balance out your energies so that you feel more in control and less controlled by the stress. As I said, if this is a pattern that you've seen happening again and again and again, or it's something that's been going on for a really long time, then I would suggest that you go to a professional homeopath instead, or in addition to taking these acute remedies, because you don't want to go on being in this pattern. It's fair enough for a special occasion, special stress occasion, but it would be good to be able to lay that pattern down so that your body learns to manage the stress a bit better. And I would always be very happy to see anyone who feels that they would like to get some professional help with their stress. I've given you several case studies as I've gone through, several examples of different ways that I have used these stress remedies with people to help with symptoms that they've had coming back again and again and again, that they've wanted to knock on the head. So the other thing that I wanted to remind you about is these out and about kits. So if you're the sort of person who likes having a big box of remedies and just choosing the right one, or the best indicated one, from the 36 kit, from the 18 kit. Brilliant. That's my sort of person too. That's the sort of person I am, I mean. But for some people, maybe particularly people who know that they do a stressful job and that this would be a really useful thing to keep in their desk drawer, because they never know when they're going to suddenly hit this moment where their performance starts to suffer because they've hit a really, stressful moment. They've been given something to do at very short notice or something like that, whatever. So on my website there are some out and about kits, and there is one for stress which has just got the 4 remedies that I've talked about today in, and you can buy this for £40. And not only do you get those 4 remedies, but you also get a handout with my nifty pictures and the symptoms for all the 4 remedies, reduced so that you get it all on one sheet of A4 like that, which I think is a really nice reminder and a really helpful comparison all in one place. So if you think that would be really helpful for you, then have a look. As I said, £40, you get the box with the 4 little bottles of pills in, and you can then keep them in your desk drawer, keep them wherever it is that you're likely to be when this sort of stress strikes. So if that sounds as if it would be something that's useful for you, fantastic. I'd be really pleased that I've had an idea that's useful for you. And I hope that this has been helpful. Any comments, anyone who watches the replay, if you've got any questions, you can send me a message, or you can put a post in the on the page, or in the group if you're watching from the group, and I will do my best to answer your questions. I hope that's been really helpful, and I look forward also to hearing your successes when you try one of these remedies and yes, that really fitted and that's really helped. I'd love to hear that. It's just such music to my ears. And on that cheery note, I'm going to say good night now and enjoy. I know stress is not a good thing, but enjoy having a sense of empowerment that there is something that you can do to help yourself, to help your family, to help your friends when they hit a stressful occasion. And let me know when you do. Bye for now.